You know what's the coolest goddamn scene from Legend of Korra? I don't mean that from the sense of it's entertaining. I mean, it is, but what makes it amazing for me is the fact that this 5-second character introduction got people to fucking love this character. I mean, can we just acknowledge how incredible that is? Writers struggle for pages and pages to connect characters to the audience, to give them depth, make them likable, character arcs, flaws, relatability, and all in an attempt to drive some level of investment, let alone a large amount of it. And here's the Legend of motherfucking Korra. 5 seconds. Everybody's favorite character. What the shit? It truly shows how much potential and room for growth this medium has, rather than making like the 7th million bland as fuck pizza dough character. You can mold it to fit any shape, but the only people who actually eat it are those who had zero taste to begin with. But more importantly, this little scene creates a great learning experience for designers. Normally when you're trying to learn from something, the whole series is basically contaminated with annoying variables, and any one of them could be the explanation for the audience's reaction. But with 0 lines out of this character, 0 other scenes, and 0 plot points revolving around this character, other than who he is exactly, it's really easy to narrow down what part of this character introduction caused people to like him so much. The first thing we can learn from this is that depth isn't essential. You know, I think a lot of people interested in story design tout this as the be-all and end-all, but I'd say it's only 1/3 of a good character. And this scene really helps to prove that. At this point in the series, Bumi has 0 depth. No matter how you spin it, he just can't have it. Even if he has emotions and opinions later on in the series, none of it has been expressed yet. You simply can't derive any depth from Yee-hoo. It just won't. It's not gonna happen. I mean, his context might hint that he has sensitivities since he was born with the burden of not being an airbender to the last potential family that could produce one. Unless Aang was sleeping around, but I doubt he'd do that considering you'd have random airbenders popping about. It was just harmonic convergence, honey. I swear! You might be able to wrangle some depth together if you thought hard about it, but that'll only be speculating. Until the character is actually expressed to that depth, you can't say is deep. What if he just went through the entire series and never even acknowledged his non-bending experience with his father? So what is it if it's not depth? See, one of the other thirds of character design that I think is all too often overlooked is investment through positive features. Side note, I used to call this redeeming features, but then I picked up a dictionary and realized I should stop using big words when I don't know what they mean. Alright, side note over, let's serendipity. Maybe it's got something to do with pack mentality or something, but we do tend to be drawn and want to spend time with people who express traits we perceive as good, important, or capable. You know, I don't think it's really surprising that we made a whole genre on superheroes rather than homeless people. And that's not to say you can't make a good homeless character, but expressing positive traits or capability is really difficult to make logical when your character is at rock bottom when they don't have to be. The best you can really do is give them positive traits that still adds up with their logic of being down on their luck. Them being nice or charitable or whatever. Give your audience something to respect, which coincidentally is a big part of what underdog stories are. Anyway, positive features. This is the best explanation for this 5-second clip. First off, from context we know he's a commander in the United Forces, so he's already in a position of power and is clearly a capable character. But this is basic character foundations. What's really clever is what's coming up. The first frame of his animation is him standing very confidently on the helm of his ship. Confident is another key trait here. Seriously, 1 frame into this introduction and we've already built and reinforced some strength of character. Alright, and the next frame onwards, here's the awesome part. He doubles over and lets out this insane, exaggerated, adrenaline-pumped scream. This guy is a commanding officer and he's batshit crazy. A complete weirdo. Not only is this a distinctive trait for him to have, which is the other third of character design I didn't mention, but the irony of him being so weird and yet in his position tells a story about his skills. Like, the fact this guy gets away with this shit in his position, let alone got it at all, means he probably has what it takes to back up his confidence. Furthermore, this scene tells us how rambunctious and free-spirited and how little of a shit he gives. Here he is making a fool of himself on the deck of a ship, and he fucking applauds himself at the end. Like, yeah, I did that. No one else was bringing any fun to this gloomy place, so I brought playing cards. Guess who has to motherfucking deal with it? There's also an element of writing involved here. The fact this guy is named after Bumi, the Earth King, who is similarly crazy, creates kind of a coincidental link that's rather interesting. And I'm not really sure how much this affects investment since this wasn't any fault of Bumi, but you know, it's a potential design question. Does story and writing surrounding the character inherently alter investment? I don't know, question for another day. Now it's worth noting that the Bumi we got in the seasons after wasn't as well received. He was still an alright character, but the love did dip quite a bit. And you can kind of see how everything I talked about dipped as well. He retired from the military and got fat, and as part of a gag, he spends a lot of the time looking like a fraud who makes up war stories. As it turns out, it looks like the crazy shit does actually kind of happen to him, but it also looks like they weren't really his achievements, but instead blind luck, and I always imagine him from this scene as like a MacGyver kind of character who always strived to make up for his lack of bending with his wit. But I also imagine him as Bumi level crazy and fun-loving, yet cocky and confident. We definitely got the fun-loving uncle side, and as the story progresses, we got the depth surrounding his life as a non-bender in a bending family. But he just kind of became so bumbling and I think something was lost. I get that people might defend it as he was more realistic or deeper or whatever, but this is the tricky part of storytelling. I feel like in trying to give him depth, they had to tune back his positive traits. Every engagement you try to add can have negative implications for others, and the fun of storytelling, for me at least, is coming up with creative ways to solve and balance that. So yeah, there you go. Bumi, the 5-second masterpiece. Let's have a round of applause for Bumi.